Welcome to the Let Go and Be Free podcast, a podcast for those who grew up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional family. I'm your host, Ron Vitale, author of the Let Go and Be Free 100 Daily Reflections for Adult Children of Alcoholics series. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to visit letgoandbefree.com. And with that, let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to this week's show. I want to thank you for coming in and listening to another episode of Let Go and Be Free. For this week's episode, we are going to focus on step 11 of the 12 steps of the Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Family World Service Organization. What I will do, if you're new to this podcast, first welcome. I will read through the step. I'll read it through twice, and then what we'll do is we'll have a discussion of it. What I do recommend is that if you have gone through the previous steps, that you would basically take some time to process what you've learned, go back, listen to some of the other previous episodes of the podcast. They're free. Go back, dig them up, find them, listen to them. And then that way you will have that opportunity to be able to say, you know what, maybe I need to do a little bit more work on whatever, step 3, step 5, step 7. That way you'll have that opportunity to be able to, really kind of think through of where you think you need to spend more time and energy. To remind everyone, the steps are a framework. The steps help us to look at life on learning how to apply healthy boundaries in our life, how to look at our own, character quirks, and how we can focus on living a healthier and happier life. It is not something where you read the 12 steps and then you're simply done. And you say onward and upward. I never have to do this again. This process could take you, months to go through the first time, maybe a year. I've first learned about the steps, more than 2 decades ago, and I still use them in my daily life. Again, they're a framework. It's not a set it and forget it and then you're done. It's a great way to use this as a check-in with yourself, on a daily basis. Focus on a different step, every day or every couple days, so that as you're living your life, you have some guidance on and a check-in, self-reflection on how you feel. So before I read this step, I'm going to remind anyone, especially new listeners to the show, that if you hear the word God in any of these steps, that does not mean like, I'm an atheist and I never want to, I don't want to talk about God and this is nuts and this is not for me. Just simply, take the word out. Use what's good in the steps for you. I'd hate to hear of someone say, well, I didn't want to give these steps, an opportunity because they mentioned the word God and that's ludicrous. I come from a perspective of, I was raised Catholic, kind of fell away from the church, focused more on spirituality and rather than, some of the dogma that was ingrained in me as a kid. And there's others that I know that are agnostic and use the steps, or atheistic and use the steps. So again, what's going to work for you? How are these steps a framework that you could use through the course of your life? What tools can you learn from these steps? I think it's very healthy to have, a step that asks you to do a, reflection, self-reflection on your behavior. What does that mean? What does it mean to ask for an amend, in a previous step? So take what you can learn from these steps, use it, and carry on. So again, if you believe in God, then you'll hear the word God and you know what that means for you, and you'll be able to apply that. I'm taking specifically a more atheistic approach in this week's episode because there is so much mention of God, and I think that could frighten some people off or angry some people. And I'd hate to lose the opportunity to point out the good aspects of that step, no matter if you believe in God or not. So with that said, let me read through step 11. It is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand God, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. So I think now you could hear why I was wanted to do a little disclaimer at the beginning of this, because this step is the most spiritually focused. So I'll read it again. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand God, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. Now, if you're still listening and you haven't turned the podcast off because you're frustrated about hearing the word God, I appreciate your open-mindedness. And, how I've looked at this step, I've tried to put myself, okay, let me put myself in someone else's shoes. Let me have some empathy. Let me have some understanding of a different point of view. If someone who does not believe in God were to read this step, what would it mean to them? How could they use this step? What is the underlying conscious message that can be passed on, to us in our daily lives? And I've done some thinking. It is a little bit of a challenge on this. So I'll simply say, I personally, if I were someone who didn't believe in God, if I thought about prayer, obviously I wouldn't be praying, but the meditation word that's in the step, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. So meditation, I have found to be extremely helpful for me, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So for the last couple of years, I've basically spent time, pretty much 5 or 6 times a week doing guided meditation that I find helps center me, helps to relax me, helps me to get more in touch with myself. So what I would say is, if you don't believe in prayer, if you don't believe in God, if you could find some type of meditation that would help you with your breathing techniques, that would help you to basically calm yourself, calm your mind, clear out the ruckus thoughts that could be going through there, the worry about work, the worry about bills, the ruminating thoughts, the catastrophizing, some of the classic signs of someone who grew up in a alcoholic or addictive environment. If your parents struggled with those challenges, you may have taken on certain behaviors to cope. One of mine that I've talked about is I worry. I'm a worrier in the sense that, I had in the past if I can think through all the things, the horrible things that could happen and prepare for them, then I can be ready, and I can be ready to solve any problem. That worked really well when I was a kid, but as an adult, I wasn't able to always focus and always be negative of like, oh my God, the world is going to fall apart and we're all going to die, and and always go to the extreme of things. That again has been a coping mechanism for me to process and put bad things that happened in a light that I have some sense of control, because if I can think through those things, then I can think around them, or I can prepare for them, and I can process that and be ready to pivot or shift or change as needed, depending on what the problem is. But when I'm meditating and working on deep breathing techniques, we've talked about this in the past, it's a simple, breathe in through your nose, hold it, for, I think it's like 7 counts, and then exhale, for another, 7 or 8 counts. It takes a little bit of process to be able to go through to get that breathing, right. And just the fact of calming yourself, being in a quiet room, having no phone on, no TV, no music, no anything, no people around, try to get in as quiet as a position as you can, and then focus on that meditating of deep breathing, and focus, I do like a guided meditation, either some calm music in the background or somebody guiding me through some type of visualization technique or something that can help me clear out and help me focus and have more clarity, rather than the head spinning with all the stuff going on. So that's the first aspect As I see this step, if I were to look at this from an atheistic point of view. And then when it says to improve our conscious contact with God, you know, what I can look at this is from a more naturalistic, your connection with nature, your connection with the world, your connection with however the heck we got here. If you don't believe that God created the world, if you believe in the Big Bang, or you believe in, somehow we popped into existence, we as a people, took billions of years and here we are today. But if you can focus on meditating, calming yourself, and then what is your connection with the world, with nature? How do you fit into that? What's happening there is it's getting you outside of your head. It's getting you outside of your normal ego, your ego brain, your ego, me, 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 me. I am this, I am that. And you're taking your energy and focusing on a different perspective, a wider, aspect of how do you fit into the grand scheme of things? What does that mean? And then the step is asking, focus and improve that conscious contact with God as you understand God, praying only for knowledge of God's will. Well, if you don't believe in God, obviously you're not going to be praying to that God. But if you do believe that there is, life came here, and you might just think, oh, well, life is just, it was pure chance. It's just what it is. Then take some time to think about the vastness, of the universe. And I say that again because it's forcing you to get out of your 24/7 head of these are the rituals that I do every day. I get up at a certain time, maybe with an alarm, or you wake up without an alarm, you have coffee, you go for a walk, you go for a run, you got to go to work, you pick up the kids. Whatever your routine is, this time to meditate is basically forcing you to think something different. Even if you just let cast your brain out, just stop for a moment and think that, yes, you are on this blue marble, orbiting around the sun, and there's other planets in the solar system, and this solar system is only one of billions within the Milky Way. And Milky Way galaxy is only one in billions and billions of galaxies throughout the universe. And that could get you thinking like, well, what else is out there? Think big. Think of what other things we don't know. If we go back in time and we think that, people thought that the earth was flat. People thought that, the earth was the center of the universe. And then when Copernicus came up with the scientific data to say, wait a minute, the earth is actually orbiting around the sun, it was considered heresy. When Galileo used his telescope, and pointed it at, Saturn and Jupiter, it was considered heresy by the church at the time because, of religious beliefs. So if we think of the more secular with this step, what does it mean? How can you get outside of your head? How can you think bigger? Going back to last week's episode about the loving kindness meditation, when you focus on the me aspect of it, and then you focus on a person, the third step of the loving kindness meditation is the world. So getting into that type of frame of mind, may the world be happy. May the world be healthy. May the world, have peace. When you focus on the bigger aspect, it is causing you to get out of your head, to look at yourself from outside in through a comparison of what you see in the world around you. And then cast your mind out even greater than that. Go beyond what you think you know, meaning, the earth, another part of the world. What's beyond, the earth? What is out there? We don't know. We have pictures from our telescopes and we can see certain things, but we have no proof that there is or isn't, let's say, life. It could be anything, microscopic life. It could be intelligent life anywhere. And you might say, well, why am I thinking about those things? Because it's getting you to think at a grander scale, getting you outside of your cranium and focusing on the me problems. It's getting you to think for a moment that you are a speck of dust in a massive construction of the universe. And that grandness is something that we don't have the power to put our arms around. If you think of the expansiveness of the known universe being 13 point whatever 7 billion light years, that light that we see from telescopes is coming from 13 billion years ago. That's just mind-boggling when you think of those things. And that's only the visible universe that we can see. We don't know enough about dark matter. We don't know about some of the smallest subatomic particles that we're working on trying to understand the very essence and nature of the universe. What binds everything together, the strong forces and the weak forces. What is all that? And you might say, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. We as a people are experimenting. We're coming up with theories. We're testing them. We're using the scientific method. We're doing all this stuff. And in this step, take the time when you meditate. If you're not going to improve your conscious contact with God, then take it to focus on what is your connection to the grander world, your community, your neighborhood, your city, your state, your country, your world, your peace as a human being on this planet, in this solar system, and go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then until you get to the point where you can't even see in your mind's eye the earth, because you're seeing these little specks of dust. And in each of those specks of dust, might be in your imagination a galaxy. And I say that because if you've ever seen, there's a great opening to the movie Contact from the 90s. It was a book by Carl Sagan, a famous astronomer who has unfortunately passed on. That in the movie, Jodie Foster, you see her as a little kid, and she looks in a mirror and she's imagining, the grand scope of the world. And so you hear her talking on like a ham radio, and she's trying to reach someone in Florida. And as she's talking, that radio wave is going out beyond the earth, and the creators of the movie show you what has happened over time, that other radio messages have gone out beyond the earth. When we first started broadcasting, early radio shows did leave our atmosphere, and those radio waves could be detected by a certain amount of somebody else was listening out in space. And so that energy, those radio waves keep going out. And so it's a beautiful way of just looking and saying, as far as humanity has been able to go, this is how far our messages have gone. And then you go beyond that. And when the weakest radio from like the early 30s fades away, and then it just goes into silence, and you just start seeing the grandness of like nebula and then other galaxies, and then it just goes further and further and further out until you're just like, oh my God, there's literally more galaxies than I can see on this screen in this movie. And then it goes right back into her eye as a kid in a reflection that she's looking at herself in a mirror. It's a really beautiful, poetic shot that I think of when you think of, we are here today, and we don't know what the grander scope of any of this is. We really don't know. We can guess. We can have faith. We can not have faith. We can believe in God, not believe in God. We just don't know. We have no definitive proof. And, some are fine with that. Some are not fine with that. What I think is important is that when we look at our lives, when you think about what you do every day, the work that you do, how you treat your kids, how you're treated by coworkers, how you're treated by your spouse, how you treat your spouse, when you think about your entire life and then think bigger than that, and you try to understand what the heck is your purpose here? What are you meant to do? And maybe there is no answer to that. Maybe it's only our wish fulfillment that we think that we're here for a special reason because we like to think that we have purpose. But maybe at the end of the day, there isn't. We're just here. We live for a certain amount of time. We die, and that's it. And then we're forgotten. But what I'm saying is, we in this world, in this moment, to our knowledge and understanding at this very moment in 2023, are the only beings that have conscious thought. We have the ability to use our imagination, use our memory to cast out. We can think back to any point in time. We can think to anything in the future and beyond. We have a power that is unique to us on this planet. We don't know if this exists in, I don't know, another place somewhere far away. Who knows? We just don't know. But what I'm saying is, we have an opportunity to take that power and to use it to self-reflect, to take it to make that connection, to say, you know what, maybe this problem that just happened today, whatever this problem is, see it in the greater construct of your life. Are you going to remember 3 years from now this tiny thing that happened today that, I don't know, maybe a check bounced or something and you get all frustrated with yourself, or you were carrying, 4 coffees to work to give with your colleagues and you trip and they spill them and you get all frustrated and angry? Are you going to remember those things? So with this step, if you don't believe in God, what I'm asking you is to think of your consciousness of what does that really mean? What are you really meant to be here for? And if you don't believe that you're here for any particular reason, then what are you going to use your time and your energy for? Are you going to use it for good? Are you going to waste it, squander it, and just not do anything and let the winds of change blow you wherever you need to go? Or are you going to be an active participant? Are you going to be someone that is going to actively make choices to have a healthier, happier life where you can thrive? These are big questions because many of us, when we look back, we grew up in an environment that may have been filled with alcohol, other addictions, dysfunction. We learned behavior that was not helpful for us to solve problems. We didn't learn how to set boundaries. We didn't learn, how to deal with impulsive emotion control. We only saw what our parents mirrored to us, and often it was a mess. And we looked at that, and now we've come to a point in our lives and said, no more. We want to do something different. That's a powerful act to be able to reflect and say, I see where I have come from. I see what I could become, or I see what I have done, and emulate at some of those unhealthy behaviors. But now I want to do something different. That's where I believe the 12 steps come in. They're that framework, the toolkit that can help us, that allows our brains to kind of filter through. Just like, those of us that believe in, let's say, the 10 Commandments and the power that's there to be able to help us guide our lives, or whatever guidance you have in living a good and healthy life, whatever that is, whatever religion, whatever that agnostic belief is. That is what I'm talking about here, that this 11th step is for. This is where we're trying to come to an understanding as best we can, what the heck are we going to do with our lives? And in order to get to that, you have to be at a quiet moment, and it takes time to process because you've got the previous 10 steps before, and there's a lot of work that's involved in that, and that work takes time. That is not work that you can just do, in a fortnight, call it a day, and it's over with, and check, bing, bing, bing. That's not how it works. So what I'm saying to you is that these big questions, the questions of who are we? Who are you? What do you want to do and be in life? What do you want to be remembered for? When you have that time to meditate, to quiet your brain, to see and be objective on your behavior and say, you know what? Yeah, I acted like an ass there. How can I become a better person? How can I become more engaged? I see that I'm selfish. How can I change that? What can I do to be more connected with my community? And some of it might be really honest conversations that, you might say, I don't want to do any of this work. I want the world to change. I don't want to change. I don't want to grow. And then that's when you find that you realize no matter what you do, the world and those around you are always changing, as are you. Nothing is constant. We might think that it is because it comforts us. It helps us feel that we have some control in our lives. But in reality is we don't. We don't know how long all of us will live. We don't know, like these words that I am saying. I looked yesterday and I saw in the last year, there's people from mostly in the US listening, second most in the UK, Canada, Poland, France, like a bunch of other countries from around the world. So think about that for a moment. There's not a ton of people, subscribers that I have yet. I'm working to get more, and I'm hoping that each of you will listen and share with others and share with friends. But for today, those who are listening, you are not the only one. There are others in other countries that are listening to these words, that are thinking their own thoughts, thinking, what does this mean to me? What does this step mean to me? How can this help me move forward? Is it just a bunch of gobbledygook and you're just like, I don't care. This doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I can't tell you, what you're thinking, but there is good in these steps. Take what is good in them and apply them to your own life. And in this particular step, if you don't believe in God, think about what that's going to mean in the sense of the larger scope of who are you, minus your name, minus your job, your role. Who are you? If you can't describe yourself as I'm a fill in race, fill in nationality, fill in what country you live in, fill in what sports fan you're in, whatever. If you can't describe yourself as any of that, at the end of the day, who are you? Go deeper than that. Think bigger than that. Think a lot bigger than that. What we don't know how any of this will all end with our world, with the universe, with whether there is a God, there isn't a God. Is it an opened universe? Is it a closed universe? Meaning, will the universe stretch on for infinity and energy will just dissipate and it will just be silence, coldness, and death? Or, as some religions believe, and as some scientists believe, there might be a big collapse, that there's so much enough matter in the world, in the universe, that what will happen to a certain point, the universe will expand and then slowly contract on itself and implode. And then from that, a second, let's say, Big Bang will come. And then a whole new universe will be created. We don't know, we see these movies about everything everywhere all at once, multiverse, and Doctor Strange and the multiverse of madness. And, there's all kinds of stuff out there of people using their imagination of maybe there are other worlds, other universes that we just don't know, can't see. Who knows? It could all be science fiction, or maybe there is a wormhole that we can go from one reality to another reality. We just don't know. But in this step, you can have a little bit of fun and you can just think about what you know, what you were taught in school, and you can say, is some of that stuff still true? Because a lot has happened, in the last 20, 30, 40 years. What does that really mean at the end of the day? And how do you fit in the grand picture? And you might say, well, I'm just a speck of one person and a speck of dust. I don't matter. Each and every person on this planet matters. They may not know it, but it is important that we discover why we matter. What is our purpose here? Even if we're not sure, try. Try to figure that out. Try to make a difference in your own life, to be a better person, to grow, to be open-minded, to listen, to learn, to self-reflect. And in this step, that's where that work is really coming home and allowing you to focus on the bigger aspect. Because after you do that meditation, let's say you're doing this for a couple weeks and you're thinking about these like super big ideas about the world and how do you fit in, you might have some ideas of, wow, I never thought of this that way. I really want to change and I don't know, volunteer, or I want to go travel, or I want to better understand things. I want to better myself. I want to whatever, fill in the blank. That's going to make a big difference in your life because you're doing the work rather than having the work do you. And what I mean by that is often we get stuck in ruts. And you go to work and you come home and then you forget your identity. You forget who you are. You forget as a kid that you used to like playing with paper airplanes and throwing them across the room, and the joy as you would watch it fly and see if the wind would pick it up and make it go further. Or you would forget, as you get older, that there were things that you wanted to do, when you wanted to be a mom, or you wanted to be a teacher, or you wanted to be just stay-at-home mom. Everything. It doesn't matter what that is. There isn't a this is better than that. It doesn't mean that you don't matter because you don't do X, Y, or Z. We all matter. We have to find and understand where we fit in our lives, what we can do to help ourselves, pull ourselves up, grow beyond the dysfunction and the trauma that we grew up with, and go on a new path. That is a big, big task. It takes lots of energy, work, effort, and you'll stumble and you'll fall and you get up again. And what I'm saying is that's why you have the framework with the 12 steps. There are the tools that are going to help you as you're going on your journey and figuring things out. Take what's good from them, learn from them, and move on. So I'm hoping that you found this episode. I know it was a little out there, in some of my ideas, but I tried to focus on what we literally know of today, from science, and how to apply that into the bigger aspect of the smallness that we think is ourselves, of how one person could make such a big difference in the world, how we could be a voice of good, how we could be a voice for ourselves when no others were a voice for us in the past. So again, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you like it, please give it a like on whatever platform you listen, on it. I appreciate that. And again, if you would like more, visit letgoandbefree.com. Still looking for some subscribers to help pay the monthly bill for the podcasting fee. If you go to the Substack link, you could basically become a pay subscriber, $5 a month, or you could purchase one of the 4 volumes Let Go and Be Free books that are on Amazon. Just look up my name, Ron Vitale, do a search for Let Go and Be Free, and you'll see the books that are there. The daily meditation books, I think, are really helpful because, I wrote them at the beginning of the pandemic all the way up through, I think the first year and a half. So they have a very unique perspective, and I like that looking back because they help you see what the past was, as we often do. We get stuck in the past, but now we're in the future. Our present is the future of when I wrote those books. And I think having that daily meditation reflection to read through each day, it's really great to be able to have that of a guidance on what to focus on. So as always, thank you again for listening to this podcast, and be well.